right, everybody. So the GM decided that they were going to run the plot points system in 5e and then didn't really put enough effort into thinking about how terribly that's designed and how that's going to break the game. So when the player just decided that there was a way out of the dungeon, they just used the plot point and made a way out. The GM didn't know what to do, and then they had a bunch of back and forth, and then the players were like, why did you input this system if you weren't going to do anything? And then the GM was like, well, it worked at Fabula, and then they were like, well, the rules are good in Fabula. Why would you just assume that they're going to work here? It's a whole thing. It was a whole thing, and session was canceled. It was a nightmare. Anyway, welcome back.
It's funny you say that because you absolutely could use a Fabula point to just declare an exit to a dungeon.
Yes. You could, but
definitely could.
As we will talk about, Fabula gives you a little bit more to work with.
Or maybe too much.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it, bud. Don't you worry. Spoilies, I guess. Welcome back, y'all, to the Sessions Cancel podcast. It's me, Isaiah. I'm here with Josh.
I'm here in a sense. Are any of us really here, though?
You know, I feel like less and less with each passing day, but you know, that's fine. Just don't let the existential dread creep in too much.
Fight it off with cocaine and hookers.
I was gonna say fight it off with some Trench Crusade, but yeah, I mean, that works too.
I don't know if that's helping you on the existential dread, I'm gonna be honest.
No, it's not. No, honestly, the thing that has helped my mental health the most in the last 3 weeks, unironically, has been that fucking Gundam gacha that I'm playing. It is taking over my life.
Of course.
Brother, the Gundam Seed event just dropped, and me and fucking Cade have been pulling to get the seed suits, and he got the Infinite Justice, and I'm really trying to get the Strike Freedom.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, side note, did I bring up last time about me rewatching the old DMC anime?
We talked about it last week. I don't know if we talked about it in...
Did we talk about on recording is what I'm asking?
No, I do not think we did, okay. No.
I'm just going to put this energy out into the internet. I'm rewatching DMC the animated series after watching the Netflix anime because everyone kept being like, I've had DMC very on the brain lately. I'm back in the mood of DMC aesthetic is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, which is basically true. But anyway, people are like, oh, the old anime was so much better, guys. Like, you should go back and watch it. And I'm like, I don't remember it being very good. I'm going to go back and watch it to see. Maybe it's better than I thought. Nah, y'all, it's still bad. Stop glazing that fucking anime. It's not very good. It's bad enough that Ruben Langdon took his name off the project. All right? Just so we're clear.
Actually?
Yes. It says Dante is voiced by Justin Cause in the credits, and that was his fucking pen name that Ruben Langdon used for that anime because he didn't want to be associated with it. And there's an old video of him talking at an anime convention where somebody said, what's the worst project you worked on? And he said the DMC anime.
That is crazy.
Yes, which is funny because he said he phoned it in really hard because they didn't give him a lot of time, but I feel like he actually did a pretty solid job voice acting wise in that show. Dante's portrayal is not really the problem with that show.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if anything, you can pretty much trust Ruben Langdon to be consistent.
Yes. Also
consistently solid across all DMC.
It's funny hearing Ruben Langdon talk because like Dante is mostly just his normal voice.
It is. Yeah.
It's mostly just his voice. But anyway, yes, I stand by that anime. Not that good. It's okay. It's fine.
I had fond memories of it. I feel like maybe I should now go back and rewatch it. You should go
back and watch it, yes, because I think it's probably worse than you remember.
It might be, dude. Like, well, so, I've been doing that a lot recently. I've been like...
I know you have.
I think I rewatched like 7 or 8 old shows last year alone. Let's see, wait. We rewatched Gundam, G Gundam. Rewatched...
Yeah. That was better than remembered.
Oh, dude, it's always peak.
G Gundam actually peak.
Yeah. Rewatched Gundam Wing. I rewatched a lot of Gundam. It's just a lot of Gundam. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I've been rewatching old shows to see if they're shit or not, and I stand by Blood Plus is still fucking peak, and Haji still will never win a fight to save his life. If anyone understands that deep cut, that's proud of you.
All right.
The love interest in Blood Plus is like notorious for never winning fights, and rewatching the show, I was like, he gets one dub, right? No, not a single dub across all 52 episodes.
Not one.
At the end, I was like, oh, he's got his cool full vampire powers. He's about to take this dub.
Still no?
He didn't really. No, the guy kind of like, he hurt him at the beginning, and the guy just kind of like ran out of time. I'm going to call that a tie because Haji got his ass beat again.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. But today is not about old anime that we watched.
No.
Today is about reminiscing on the old JRPGs that we played as we inevitably sink into middle-agedness.
Why did you put it that way?
I don't know. Anyway, we're going to talk about Fabula again.
Okay.
Because this game is peak. And we finally got some practical experience playing it because we've been glazing it real hard, rightfully so.
Glazing it
but we haven't
hard.
had any practical experience playing the game, and now we do a little bit. You know, we only run 2 sessions, going on 3 soon. But I think that does give us just enough to talk some shit.
Absolute authority. I can tell you if it's garbage or not.
I mean, that's a little crazy. I don't know about all that. But
I'm not actually stating that.
I can tell you that I have some thoughts. Mostly good, some critique, but mostly good. Before we get into it, though, Josh, tell people what they need to know, and do not fuck me on this like you always do when I try to pass it to you.
I don't know what you mean by that, but anyway, hit follow or subscribe for more hot Fabula content.
That is such amazing levels of fucking cap, sir. I want you to know that. This is some fucking Char Aznavour. I've never betrayed someone
I've never
a day
betrayed
in my
anyone
life.
a day in my life.
So they re-released, they like reanimated a bunch of Zeta, and they brought that line back. And I was like, yes,
it's kind
fucking Quattro.
It's kind of important.
Unironically, it is very important to his character as Quattro Bagina, and
yeah,
the immediate heel turn after Zeta to going back to being Char, and then betraying all his friends.
And then betraying everyone. Yeah.
Camille still vegetative, being like, dude, what the fuck?
But yeah, if you want more of that sweet Fabula content, hit subscribe, because apparently we can't shut the fuck up about it.
Look, dude, very rare, I feel, do we like hit a game that we vibe with that hard. Like for me, it was Lancer. For you, it's Apocalypse World or the PBTA games, and like, yeah, I feel like this is one that we're just kind of sharing.
I still consider Apocalypse World largely my favorite tabletop game. So
understandable. I think I can finally declaratively say that Lancer is that for me.
That's crazy. That's crazy for me.
That
game is just a lot. That game is a lot.
It is a lot. But here's the thing. Isaiah notoriously doesn't like prepping.
Robot.
Every week is like, gotta get this prep done, baby.
Are you just saying you like the game because it forced you to prep? Like it just doesn't give you a choice?
I like the game so much that the prep doesn't give me like anxiety attacks. It's like yeah. I get my artwork, my studio work done Thursdays, and at like 4:30, I got like 2 hours before a session. I'm like, it's rise and grind, gamers. It's time to prep. Like
it's rise and grind. Fair enough.
Also, like mech's cool. Like they're just so
yeah,
cool.
I know. Big
all
robot.
the mechs
I
are
know.
so sick.
I know.
We're all going off topic again. Far too early.
Yeah.
We're 10 minutes in of absolute bullshit. Let's get to Fabula. Okay. Basic overview. We're going to talk about 2 sections we had kind of broadly. I'm going to go over some of the pros and a general thoughts, and then we're going to talk about combat, and then we're going to talk about the Fabula points.
I think we should do a brief housekeeping perhaps here.
Okay.
So just for those curious in terms of who's doing what and what we have and yada yada, I am the GM, so we will get a GM perspective on this. Isaiah is a player, so we're getting both sides. For those who want to know a little bit of the mechanical stuff, Isaiah's character is a weapon master, guardian arcanist. And then we have a chimerist florist and a gourmet weapon master. I think she just, gourmet weapon master, and then a tinkerer, wayfarer, merchant. The players just hit level 6, so basically we're talking about the beginning of the game because you start the game at level 5. Any other? We're using the main book and the natural fantasy book
with some playtest stuff sprinkled in.
A tiny amount of playtest things, yes. That's the housekeeping.
Keep in mind, take any of these opinions, good or bad, with a grain of salt. We are still very early on in the game, and these thoughts are likely to change as we play. You know, there is 100% some growing pain going on, and it's a double-sided sword, right? Because on one end, we're doing really cool things that maybe we shouldn't be doing, rules as written, but it's fine because it's cool. But then on the other end, we're running into things that we go, oh, well, it's literally what we talked about last session, right? You play a game and go, I kind of wish it was like this. Happens every time, baby. But we're going to start with the pros.
Okay, I feel like you're referencing a specific thing that I'm not remembering, but we'll get
in last session where I was like, when you play a game and you think about a game critically, you immediately go, I want to start homebrewing things.
Oh, that's what you meant. Oh, okay,
yeah.
I thought you were referencing something more specific, but yeah, okay, fair enough.
No. But yeah, so just general thoughts. We're going to go over some of the pros first, and we're going to hit the cons. Number 1, this game is super fucking fun. Like, every aspect of this game is enjoyable to play, and I do not think that happens often. There are games that I love. Fantasy Flight Star Wars is fucking awesome. I love that game. But the character creator is a little annoying.
It's a little... I don't know that annoying is the right word. The character creation's a little clunky in that game. There's some elements of it that...
I would call that frustrating.
Yeah, frustrating's a good word. Yeah, there's some confusion to it for sure. If you aren't paying close enough attention, you can miss some weird bits. Yeah. I will say, slight caveat on the statement of nothing we don't like in the game to play wise yet. We haven't quite interacted with everything yet. Right, mechanically
yes.
speaking. There's a couple
everything
bits
we have interacted with is we are deeply enjoying. The character creator is really good.
I think that's mostly fair to say.
On the topic of character creator, Emma really managed to strike a fine balance, I feel, because on one end, there is a massive number of options, which is good, right? Because it's exciting. There's so much stuff that you want to try and fuck with, but at the same time, it's not so many options that it feels like really overwhelming. And maybe it would if we used all of the books. I'm sure you'd get some analysis paralysis there. But assuming you're running it the way it's supposed to be written, where you
using all of the books would only add 7 more classes, which is not like that many. So.
It's more classes, the quirks, the rules. Like, if you did the game and you were doing all of it, and then you were doing the Technospheres thing, then you have to figure out which rules aren't going to conflict. If you did all that, which is not the way the game is supposed to be played.
Yeah, you're very much not intended to smash all of it on top of each other.
Yeah, that will get noodly and weird, but that's not the way you're supposed to do it. And given that we're trying to do it the way we're supposed to do it, yes, there are plenty of options, and they don't feel overwhelming. Very good. Quirks, I'm in love with. I love my quirk. I took the ancient weapon, or the high fantasy version, I believe, is...
it's called heirloom weapon.
Heirloom weapon. I'm treating it more like an heirloom weapon. It's not like a piece of magitech. It's just a magical sword with a little deity inside of it. And it's really fun because the quirks, and we've talked about this when we were sort of theorizing how impactful they are. No, they're very impactful. once I had my character sort of figured out, I wanted to do the samurai thing. The quirk informed so much about the character that I wasn't even really expecting once you think about why it is the way it is and how it acts the way it does and why it could fail in the way that the weapon is supposed to fail from time to time. And just from all that alone, that made me decide I wanted to swap out Spiritist for Arcanist because I liked the idea that there was a spirit of the weapon and I could do a bunch of stuff with that. And your brain goes in 20 different directions immediately because it just starts rolling, and it's great.
Well, I do think it's also worth pointing out that the impact of the quirks can also vary a bit, because there are some quirks that will definitely, broadly speaking, impact your thinking less. So like it doesn't necessarily have to be something that gigantically throws your whole train of thought into another area or whatever. You get what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't necessarily mean like that. What I'm saying is that it informs a lot about who your character is, right?
It can inform a lot of, yes. Like, I mean, so, we have one character who took the Arboreal quirk and basically designed her entire character premise around that quirk. Like the fact that her character is a plant person. It's basically her whole character. But like, for example, we also have the chef who took the quirk that was just the big bro quirk, which significantly less impactful on her like character idea. So you can dial it in and out. It doesn't necessarily have to take over. Sareth herself said like the big bro informed a lot about the way her character is portrayed, like the quirky, inquisitive, in this case, big sister thing that she had going on. Yeah, informed some backstory stuff, but not as much as like your entire character being built around the sword, or plant person character being entirely built around the plant person thing. Like, you know what I mean?
I suppose. I think in terms of a role play thing, I think it informed a lot. Maybe not about necessarily the character itself mechanically or stuff like that.
Well, I don't even mean mechanically. I'm saying that there's a dial to how much I am talking about role playing. I'm saying there's a dial to how much you can let it in to the role playing. I'm just saying because some people might hear that and be like, oh, so if you pick a quirk, like it has to influence your entire character. And it's like, it doesn't have to necessarily. You can dial it in and out. And some of the quirks are a little more forceful than others. If you pick the one that makes you like a robot or a plant person, you can adjust how much that matters. If you pick the one that's like, you are the grand arbiter of the end of the world, yeah, all right, that one you kind of have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, that's the... Yes, I'm not just saying. Not even really disagreeing with you. It's a spectrum for sure.
Its degree of influence is open-ended, which is good because some people might not want to commit that much.
Yes.
And some people might want to pick a quirk entirely mechanically speaking, which I suppose you could, but you are missing out a little bit if you do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing anything for sheer mechanics in this game. It just doesn't really speak to the spirit of the game.
Well, like, for example, you could take the quirk you took Ancient Weapon and just do it purely for cool weapon and not address why you have the cool weapon at all, Like, you could do that, but it would be a little like, all right, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't jive with, like I said, it just sort of the same. It doesn't really jive with the spirit of the game. Like,
no.
You're supposed to put some thought and some cognition into why your character is making the decisions they're making and why they're taking the classes they're making, the quirks they're using, all that.
You could continue.
I know. I literally was like, we're at the top of the notes and I already lost myself.
That's good.
Now, this isn't a con, but it is worth mentioning. I did make a couple mistakes with my quirk weapon. This sort of speaks to an inexperience with the game, and this is not necessarily a frustration I had, but something that I sort of goofed up on, and now that I have hindsight, I might go back and shift things, because certain abilities did not work the way that I thought they worked, and I learned, and some of you might know this, some of you might not, you could be a fucking idiot like me, and not realize the defensive qualities for rare items, the ones specifically labeled above the offensive qualities, those are not for weapons and armor. Those are for those are not for armor and shields. Those are for weapons.
Yes, weapons have defensive
armor and
quality,
shields,
and then armor and shields have their own defensive and offensive qualities.
Yes. This is more of a bookkeeping thing for any of you looking to play this game. Keep track of that, because if you're going to be like me and be an idiot, I probably would have done a couple things differently. I do kind of just like that my weapon does more damage, but like, fuck it.
I will also say it is kind of funny that both you and our plant person player did the exact same mistake in that you completely fucked up how custom weapon builds work, which I thought was funny.
Yes.
I guess
yes.
I don't know what that means necessarily. I guess maybe the custom weapon stuff could be worded a little more clearly or something, because you both fucked up and you both seem to have the exact same misunderstanding, and I was kind of like, huh, that's weird.
Yes, I mean, I think as a general rule, the game is written really well, but there are certain things that I still needed clarification on. Like we're gonna talk about the multi two-handed fighting thing.
Well, I'll tell you,
just because
as a little bit of a spoiler, I think what it is there are a couple elements of the game that need to be a little wordier than they are, and that leads to some unclearness. Like there should be, it's just not as thoroughly explained as it could be.
Yeah,
and I think
see that.
There's a couple of reasons that might be, but there's a particularly from the GM side, there's a couple of bits that I was like, oh, this could have used a little more clarification, so I would have, or not even clarification, a little more guidance to make it clearer.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say I'm not explaining this well because I'm trying to not go into the entire tangent that I'm thinking of. But it'll make sense once I get there.
Yes. No. I think I know what you're going to talk about. So, underneath, yeah. When you start your session 0, the game talks about all that really fun world building stuff we had mentioned in our initial reviews of the books and atlases, and that was such a really good, really, I almost say like nostalgic, because it really does. It brings me back to the Fire Emblem campaign days where we designed the world together, and it was so cool to be able to carve out like a little piece of the universe for myself and go, okay, this is my thing. And then the players made their own thing, and then I would go, oh, what if you did this? And then they would tell me, oh, what if we tried this? And then what if your thing had this thing going on? And it's just, it's weird to call it almost heartwarming, but that's really how it felt. It just kind of was like, this is good. Like, I know that's not the most critical way of wording it, but
well, I find it
having
a little funny.
Hand.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh no, just having a hand in the world building itself, and like I always have my players do this in any of the games I've run, but to have the game make that the standard, it just I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, valid statement, and I'm not saying this to invalidate what you just said, but I do think it's a little funny that you're like, oh, that's really cool. I like that a lot, because I've played many different systems that tell you to do the exact same thing, and I've almost come to expect that of a lot of games, and I often get disappointed that a lot of games don't have a system for how you should do that. You know?
No, fair enough. I mean, like, I've played a few games, but not as many as you, clearly. Although a lot of the ones I've played have pre-established settings.
Yeah, well, I think, purely, I think it's kind of a by chance thing. It's just, I have happened to play a lot of systems that do that same build the world together thing that Fabula has you do, just by, I don't know, just because that's what I looked for, I guess. I don't know, just by chance, I suppose. But I just think it's funny. Like, I agree. Yes, I do like how Fabula does it. I just think it's funny that you took note of it because I'm looking at other games being like, yeah, why aren't you doing that? You know?
Look, no, I mean, I agree. I want more games to do it for sure. Like, because, you know, when I have my players do that, right, there is always some disco biscuits going on because
yeah, of course.
Some players give me fucking pages and pages and pages and pages and pages, which I love. I'm one of the people who are like, no, yes, give me more. I want all of that because it's less work I have to do, you know? But then some players go, my character is from a planet. I'm like, all right, cool. What's on the planet?
Stuff.
Water. Okay, so like an oceanic planet? No, just like a lot of water. So like a temperate, like a tropical planet? Yeah. Okay. All right. So what, you know, it's that thing where you're like, you got the clipboard, you're going,
Tell me more.
And that, yeah, that's annoying as fuck, and I don't really like it.
It can be annoying, yes. I will say, I do like, however, that I like the way that Fabula broke it down into very bespoke chunks for the world creation stuff and gave you very specific questions to ask and said, have each player contribute to one of these. You know, have each player contribute to the question of this chunk. So there's like 7 steps to the flow chart. Each step, you know, every player should contribute, GM included, obviously. So I do like the way it broke it down.
What is it was major events, calamities,
So shape of the world, map sheet, which we skipped that one because I just didn't feel the need to do it really. What is the role of magic and technology in your setting? Major kingdoms and nations, historical events, enigmas and mysteries, and then terrible threats. Those are the 7 flowchart steps.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, really kind of hit the nail on the head. Like they are the crucial things that you as a GM when you're world building should think about. And the fact that it's written out for you and it's comprehensive and it lets players think about it. Very good.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more about this later.
It's also just organized well.
No, yes, it's organized very well. We're going to talk about this later because this is a pro and a con, I think. And it has to do with the traits. And to clear, like to you know, off bat, I really like that the idea of invoking your traits. A lot of games do this, I know, but to see it in this game, it's just another thing that I'm like, yes, this fucks. I like that the game expects you to actually go into detail as to why your trait matters. You don't just say, I'm invoking my trait. It's, you know, my character, to set the scene a little bit, we were fighting these like corrupted wolves. And my character grew up in a village with a monastery and a lot of monks traveling to and from that monastery. So he learned some sutras, especially like specifically ones for, you know, cleansing and removing corruption and, you know, all that good stuff. So I said, oh, okay, you know, well, my character knows these things. And I established that my character knows these things because my village, I wrote in my like personal character notes that that's the kind of village it is. And use that argument to get me both the information I needed and allowed me to help with the ritual roll. And the fact that the fact that the game says like, no, you don't just magically get this. Like, explain why you get it. Go into detail.
Yes. I feel like you skipped over part of the explanation a little bit there. What Isaiah is talking about is you spend a Fabula point to invoke a reroll, but you can't just say, I would like to spend my point and get a reroll. You have to say, I'm spending the point, and the reroll is because of this specific trait. So Isaiah's character has this background of, you know, religious cleansing rituals. So he's saying, when he was helping with the ritual to cleanse the wolves of the corruption, he's like, oh, this trait is relevant to this scenario, so I'm invoking this trait to do the reroll.
Well, more than that, so I invoked the trait not quite mechanically, but in the sense of roleplay to put forth the idea that it was even possible to do that thing, you know? And then I asked you, like, because I know this.
Yes.
Right, that's kind of what I'm saying. I asked you, like, oh, my character has this information. Would that be broadly applicable here? And you being like, well, yes, you have plagues and illnesses in your home that you can use, that these things work on, so it could.
But yes, yes, true, but also the mechanic specifically is the Fabula reroll thing.
Yes. And I mean, the last thing, on the topic of rituals, they're really cool. They're really, really cool. And
they pretty much worked how we were thinking they would.
It literally just do be the weave magical bullshit button.
Yeah.
And
it covered quite a few bases.
Yes. I didn't expect us to use rituals and to another degree projects, because they invoke a sort of similar mind space mechanically.
Yes, they do.
I didn't think we were going to use them as much as we did in 2 sessions, and I don't think that's going to be a reflection of every session, but
I think it will, actually.
You think so?
Yes, because I think the thing that Emmanuel did, and how much of this was 100% intentional and how much of it was sort of just a good instinct, I don't know, but none of the spells in the game really do... How should I phrase what I'm trying to say? The spells that you get in the game and the class abilities that you get in the game are sort of tightly focused in what they are capable of doing. So in something like D&D, you have Dispel Magic and Prestidigitation and Counterspell and, Mold Earth. A lot of spells that cover these weird sort of niche corner scenarios, because D&D basically says if you don't have a spell for it, you can't magically do it. So with Fabula, the spells and character, what do they call them? Character skills. Yeah, they use the word skills. The spells and character skills that you have are pretty narrow in what they can do on their own. So what's going to happen is you're going to run into scenarios where your spells do not cover, and you're basically going to be forced to turn to rituals because you're going to want to do something that you can't do any other way. Like, it's just going to happen because your spell and skill list are so focused that you're going to be like, well, GM, can I use, I'm a spiritist or I'm an elementalist. Can I walk on water? Like, well, you don't have a walk on water spell, but you can do an elementalist ritual to make yourself walk on water, Mm-hmm. So I think the game's almost forcing you to make them happen. Almost
that is true. Yeah,
somewhat subconsciously. Like, you're probably not going to think of it in that way, but that's kind of what the game is doing. It's looking at it and go, well, you have to solve a problem. How are you going to do it?
So it's something really funny that Paladin and I figured out is that, or that I guess he figured out and he told me, is that because he's a tinkerer, one of his abilities is that he just gets like 150 zenith to put towards all of his projects. Like, he just gets that for free. So he effectively can just do minor projects for freebies, because I think a minor project is like 100 zenith. So it just,
yes,
he gets that and then some, which is pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Visionary. When you work on a project up to skill level times 100, zenith of material costs are automatically paid. Additionally, you generate an additional skill level progress every day. If multiple characters with the skill work on the same project, the effect will be cumulative. So, yeah. Which is, it's the MacGyver thing, right? You just have stuff on hand.
Yeah.
Which, if he took that, probably means he's going to be doing more of that horse shit.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's his whole thing, right? He just wants to be he wants to straight up be Blacksmith MacGyver man. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised in the fucking slightest.
Which means I'm going to have to start dealing with that.
Correct.
Yeah.
It do be the fucking TF2 scout think fast chuckle nuts.
Right.
I think you'll be fine. You'll be all right.
We're going to find out.
Yes, we will.
Do
Do you have any thoughts about the pros before we switch to the cons?
Let's see. You said there was a good. You said good and bad when you were talking about the traits. What was the bad? I feel like I missed.
Oh, yes. So that will be a part of the cons.
Okay.
Sorry. One last thing for the pros. I'm really excited to get into the Arcana stuff. We did a little bit of it. We haven't done a whole lot of lore stuff on my personal Arcana and like her whole deal, but I am very excited to get into that conversation because I've got a million thoughts.
Yeah. So pro stuff. I mean, I'm looking at the pros that you put here specifically. Practical theoretical back. Yeah. Probably not right this second, but something will probably come to me, I think.
Getcha.
We'll see. I mean, I guess a pro is combat goes quite smooth.
Yes, I'm going to talk about that a little bit because I have a whole section for combat.
Understanding of it goes pretty quick, yeah.
For cons for general gameplay, now, this is probably due to us being at low level and not like insubstantially due to us admittedly having some shit rolls.
But I mean, yes, you guys were relatively unlucky last session, I felt.
Yeah. Yes, we were. But with that in mind, I am sort of questioning the math used to come up with dice checks and how to achieve them. And what I mean by that is I personally use the jack of all traits starter thing as described in the
jack of all traits. The jack of all traits, the brain. Isaiah is saying his starting stat layout was D8s across the board.
Yes, yeah. And I felt like I was struggling quite a bit to meet standard DC, which is DC 10. A lot like Lancer. And
well, the DC can go up and down in this game. It's not fixed like in Lancer.
Yes, it is. In Lancer, it is fixed to 10. But it presents a question, and this sort of goes into the invoking traits thing, that I feel like the lack of standardized floating modifiers adds a level of swing to the game and I don't know if it's 100% a good thing. Like, obviously I could change my mind if we hit higher level and the stability seems to level out a bit. But I can imagine being like level 20 plus and still being like, how am I struggling to meet DC 10? And maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is that, you know, it tries to maintain a level of complexity while keeping numbers low. That 100% could be an intentional thing, but I still don't know if I like that. I feel like on some level, I find it a little frustrating. Am I making any sense? I feel like I'm not wording this well.
Yeah, I mean, you're just saying your success rate is lower than you want it to be. That's really the crux of it.
Yes, it does feel a bit low.
And yeah, and we did look into the math, and basically, if you're rolling 2d8 and the difficulty is 10, you're looking at like I think it was like a 45% success chance.
It was 43.7.
Where'd you get that number from?
Just remember, I wrote that number down somewhere. It's approximately 43% though.
Okay. Well, it's below half.
Yes.
which is a little on the low side, I will say. 43.75. So, yes, below half is a little surprisingly low. I think part of it is not having characters, avoiding the roll to take a piss problem. Like, don't have characters roll for everything. Also, the floating +2 modifier, I think, can get thrown in there. Also, I think it's partially to encourage Fabula point usage. And potentially, I think it might also be to encourage general teamwork and clock-based stuff. Like, it almost feels like there's a bit of a de-emphasis on just a normal run-of-the-mill check covering any problem you might run into. I'm thinking. That's a theory at the moment. I can't back that one up 100%, but that's sort of what I'm feeling. And I'm also wondering if maybe on my side, GM side, I should just be lowering the number a little bit more.
I mean, I don't think you should be, because the game does say, when in doubt, go with 10, right?
When in doubt, go with 10, but that doesn't mean you can't throw out some more 7s, The only reason, the main reason I say that is because the descriptor of the difficulties themselves is it says 7 is anyone with a bit of training or natural talent, and then 10 is a competent person or a very talented one. So a very talented one is making me think like, okay, maybe the intention is don't make everything a 10. Like, go with a 10 if you're really unsure, but if not, adjust the number. And also maybe just if a player has 2d8 on a check, don't go for it as much, like sort of avoid it and give it to somebody else or have someone or teamwork it. I feel like the idea is you lean into the shit you're good at, avoid the shit you're not, and try to work together as much as you can. Idea on top of using Fabula points and stuff to modify, because spending Fabula points is, a big deal.
It is. Well, so to that point, it gets to a point where your character, I feel, could feel a little incompetent if you have to constantly rely on other players to succeed standard rolls. Like if your character's got like a D6 to something, yeah, having a player come in and be like, I got you, bud. But if D8 is supposed to be the like, you're kind of good at everything but not great at anything, if you do that, then the feels like the need to have someone help you for every check, including stuff you're supposed to be good at, just feels kind of like demoralizing in a way.
I don't think D8 means you're kind of good at everything. D8 means I think D8 is supposed to be you're passably acceptable at things, because the average stat layout has a D10 in there. Which makes me think like an average character, using the word average makes me think an average character should have a D10 in there somewhere when they're trying to do stuff. You know what I mean?
Is that the average stat layout? Hold on.
That's the name of the stat layout. So the stat layouts are jack of all trades is D8s across the board. Average, D8, D10, 2 D8s and a D6. And then specialized is 2 D10s and 2 D6s. So it uses the word average for the stat layout that has the 1 D10 in it.
Interesting.
And if you roll... I'm actually... Hold on, let me open the dice calculator up again there, because now I'm just curious what kind of percentage we're looking at if you have... Oh, is it not going to let me do multiple kinds of dice? Damn it. All right, well, scratch that. I was going to check the percentages, but I don't think it's going to let me. Sadness.
Well, something that I some comments / Emma, please correct me if I'm wrong about this. But I distinctly remember Emma saying that the difference between something like a D8 and a D6 is going to feel negligible. And I get, the idea being like one die up or one die down is not going to feel like a massive shift. But it kind of does.
Yeah.
It feels way more relevant than I feel like I figured it would. And for like several things, right? To roll a critical success, you need to roll doubles on a 6 up.
6 up, yeah.
So a D6, you get one shot at that per die. Whereas with 2D8, you have 2D8, potentially
you get
4.
3. 4?
Or yeah, sorry, 3.
3, 4, 3, 3.
Well,
3.
yeah, 6, 7, 8. So,
6, 7, 8, 3.
Yeah. That feels a lot more significant to rolling a critical success, which will help you succeed on a roll. And this goes doubly if you have like, well, so a D8 to a D10 probably won't, because while you can hit a higher maximum, your chance to crit will remain the same because it has to, right? You can't double D10 unless you hit level 20 and get one of the stat bumps.
Right.
But yeah, it just feels like a D8 to a D6 and less so for a D10 to a D8, but like it feels more significant than I feel like I otherwise would have expected.
Yeah, this is one of those things I don't know enough about math to really, like, I don't know how to do the calculation to figure this shit out, so I can't really argue one way or the other on what it is, but I get what you're saying. It is a little weird. It does seem like the number averages are lower than I was thinking. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I'm not 100% sure on what to do with it, and the game doesn't give a ton of information on that. It's pretty brief on that particular thing in the GM section. So
I brought this up in my notes. I wonder what... Right, because this game also follows the idea of, like, if it makes sense for your character to just not have to roll for it, you just don't roll for it, even if it might be a little more complicated because you are good at that thing. Right. What was the intended ratio of auto success based on background versus roll to succeed?
Right.
Like, what was the intended ratio on that? Everything we just talked about considering dice almost makes me think it's higher than I would have expected.
What's higher than you would have expected?
The ratio of just success based on background because it makes sense in the narrative.
Oh, like there should be
that'll
more
be happening
of that.
more than I expected. Yeah.
I do think that is perhaps part of the intention. I think it's that idea of only make the dice hit the table when it matters, and if it matters, it's not going to be super easy, right? That idea.
Yes.
Because if you're making a check that is, the situation is important, and you're like, I only have 2d8 for this, but I really want to succeed, so I'm going to burn the Fabula points for my bonds, and my whole team is going to help me because this is really important. That kind of makes sense if narratively the moment is important. Whereas it does feel a little weird if it's just I'm arguing with some guy and then I'm burning all this Fabula or whatever to argue with the guy. Yes. So yeah, maybe the ratio there is a little off and we're perhaps too D&D brained. That's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% that isn't the case. The D&D brain runs thick. There's time, like...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We were talking about it before. Like, I just sort of want floating modifiers to your stats. Because it makes sense. Like, Lancer kind of does... It plays both games, right? Because you have both a floating modifier in your grit. It's just the thing that you always have. And then you get to add an additional floating modifier for your trigger. And because the DC typically doesn't go past 10, it's still the idea of, well, your character would have a plus, like I think the highest, I think someone has a +9 to hacking rolls. So typically when it comes to hacking, I just let her get away with it because she literally can only roll a 1 to fail. and she has an ability that lets her reroll. So typically she's not going to fail a standard hack. I just kind of let that rock. And it gives you like a numeric foothold, I guess, or reference point that you can put to the DC, whereas using your background is good and I like it, but it doesn't provide you concrete answers. And maybe the game doesn't want concrete answers. It wants more of a conversation, but I think relying too much on the conversation could inflate playtime and lead to some maybe bloated encounters that don't need to be, you know?
Yeah. Maybe.
Thoughts on that?
I can't like dice math. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
No, I mean,
dice
I
math
don't
and
think
how to
this
use it and
necessarily
stuff.
requires math. I think this is just sort of like, I mean, yes, for definitive answers, you need math, but I think this is just a vibes thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall total. I'm really trying to find a fucking dice calculator, by the way, that I can use.
That shows you percentages?
Like a normal human
What happened to the one we were using yesterday?
It wasn't letting me use two different kinds of dice. I'm trying to find one that's doing what I want that doesn't require me to have a fucking math degree to use. So, like, I'm getting confused as you're talking. Anyway, like, yes, overall, yeah, averages are... Yeah, like the average numbers are perhaps a little lower than I was expecting, or the roll totals are a little lower than I was expecting. Yes. Yeah, that's kind of that's like all I can I can't really add anything else, you know.
Right. I mean that's pretty much all I got for the cons for the general thoughts. Moving on to the combat. Pros. Combat has a bit of nuance to it. Like there's a learning curve to the general flow of combat, but once you get the hang of it, that shit is snappy. Like we were in a fight with 8 total turns on the initiative tracker, and a round took like 5 minutes tops.
Yeah, rounds are generally pretty fast.
And Lancer. Rounds do not typically take 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think with
5 minutes is just trying to get the party to understand what's going on the battle map, kind of thing.
Right. I think in particular with Lancer too, or with D&D, I should say. I can't speak on Lancer. I don't know why I said Lancer there. A lot of the time between rounds is, I think a big thing that slows 5e down is, all right, hold on. I need to fucking close this calculator because I'm losing my mind here. I'm trying to do too many things at once.
I think you just muted yourself.
What the fuck? Okay, well, for audience, you're gonna hear me yapping. I somehow did just mute myself by accident. Not sure what I did there. What I need to close this fucking calculator I'm looking at because now I'm losing my mind. Fucking train of thought. Oh, part of what slows 5e down in particular is the making sure that you've what the hell was I just trying to say? Maximize the use. That's not a good way to say that. Making sure you fully used your turn and everything you could potentially do, because D&D has action, bonus action, move, and reactions. You're often in a turn trying to focus on or worry about, did I use everything in my turn that I could possibly use? So a lot of the slowdown in D&D becomes, okay, I did my action. Let me double check to see if there's any bonus actions I can do. Okay, I can't do that one, can't do that one, can't do, okay, bonus action done. Is there anywhere I could move that would be beneficial? Okay, looking around, no, okay, my position's probably fine. Is there somewhere I can position myself or something I can do to make it so I can get a reaction on the next turn of somebody else? Yes, I can move my character here and then this character will move and then that'll proc a reaction thing I can do. Okay, now I've used my entire turn. A lot of 5e comes down to that, Whereas Fabula, you throw out the movement component completely. So obviously that's going to speed things up. And there's no such thing as a bonus action. You have your action for the turn, you do your action. Now, some people might say, doesn't that mean that the actions are really limited, like action economy wise? Sometimes, yes, there will be some turns where you do one big thing and that's kind of it. But a lot of abilities will have riders or other things that you can do after them or in the next round, in the next turn. So you'll have an ability where it's like you do X, Y, or Z thing and then you get a free follow-up attack. And that'll just be part of the action. Or you'll do something on the first turn. A good example is our florist character has an ability where she plants this flower, this lily, and the lily can purge status effects. The first turn she plants the flower, that's all she can do. The second turn, the lily now does passive healing, so she can do something else in that subsequent turn, and the lily does a benefit on top of that at the end of her turn. So it's like a little bit of setup and then a payoff of more stuff to do later down the road. So there's a lot of that. In a way, it's kind of doing, Fabula kind of does bonus actions the way that I think 5e originally intended for bonus actions to work, in that they are bonus. They are extra. You're not always trying to fish for them. They come up in certain scenarios. I think Fabula actually achieved that by not giving you a bonus action mechanically, but having abilities that essentially have bonus action riders. So you're only fishing for a bonus action when you know it's going to be relevant. So that greatly speeds up your turn. And you know, if you're just doing a basic attack, you probably won't have a bonus action rider. And if you do have bonus action riders on your basic attack, you probably know they're there because you do them all the time. So
yeah,
yes,
I mean,
all that long-windedness to say, yes, it has snappy things up a lot by making it clear you could do X and you could do Y.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, basically what we were saying in the last Atlas, the expanded Atlas classes are sort of just brilliantly built, and because those riders being a perfect example, to the point that I'm kind of jealous because I'm using primarily like core rulebook classes, which feel very simple in comparison. I mean, I guess kind of a con, like up front. I almost want more of that D&D-ness back in the game. Like, only having one action at the moment is driving me a little crazy, because I go, wait, but I can only do one thing. Like I want to do more than just a thing. That's kind of why I focus so hard on the like figuring out how to get 2-weapon fighting, because I was like, one thing is not enough things. I need more things. There's more things I want to do.
Uh-huh. I mean, yeah, I think there are. I think that's going to come down to a build thing and how you set yourself up. You currently only kind of, well, although you kind of also don't have one thing, because if you think about it, you have a transforming weapon, so you could potentially attack, transform, swap to your weapon that has quick, and then get 2 attacks the next turn, which depending on what abilities you have might matter. Or if you summon your Arcana, you could potentially use your Pulse or your Dismiss, both of which are an additional thing that you can slap on. So it sort of depends on the situation. You're not always limited to one thing. You know?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So to that point, like, the Arcana things you can only do, like, because you only have one action, you can only do one of those things. And the Pulse, just for the Arcana I picked, is kind of simple. And
yeah,
it's not bad, but I don't know 100% how it scales with the stuff I have. Like, if I had a weapon that did multi, it says 1 attack. So does that attack affect 2 things? And if I'm 2-weapon fighting, does the Pulse affect that in the same way? Because technically,
yes,
weapon fighting is still 1 action. Like,
2-weapon fighting is 2 attack rolls,
but still 1 action. Because it says you can use a free action to take an attack.
Yeah, still 1 action, yes.
So, like, it's There are questions I have. I feel like if these are clarified, it might open up some possibilities for me, but I feel like I am running into the... I don't know how much stuff is good enough to justify the whole action being put towards it, you know?
I mean, here's the thing. For example, if you have your quick weapon out and you have your Arcana summoned, you have 3 attacks. Right?
I don't though. That's kind of what I mean. Is
no,
the
you
pulse
do.
Takes an action to give you a free action.
So well, I probably shouldn't be trying to do this. So when you perform for the attack. Okay, I gotta double check the wording on the pulse now. The pulse, in addition, gain pulse. All you merged. Pulse effect may only dosu doing that. Okay, yeah, okay. So yeah, it's a free attack. You would still get your 2-weapon fighting though. For that particular.
Yeah, I mean that does make it a bit better, and it helps me because I was, one of the things I was really thinking about is should I do the magic defense thing. So if I did the dismiss, that technically is 3 actions, but that's like a 1.
Yes.
At the moment, at least, that's a once a combat thing because it's 40 mind points to even summon the Arcana, and then you dismiss it. It'd be kind of waste to just pop it and drop it.
The point I'm saying is your current setup for your particular character, yes, you are slightly limited in how much stuff you're throwing out in turn. Just because of how you are currently set up. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And also, even if it does, I still stand by. I'd rather have it the way it is with Fabula, where everyone is not trying. Because the thing that annoys me in 5e is it's just everyone's just. You're always fishing for the bonus action, right? You're always looking for it. You're always trying to be like, do I have a bonus action here? And then if you play a class like a wizard or a sorcerer, which generally don't tend to have a lot of bonus action options, you will sometimes feel shitty because you go, okay, I did my thing. I don't have a bonus action. Now you feel like you have underutilized your turn. Right? Like, I remember playing a sorcerer in 5e when we were playing, when Sam was GM and for Magic Goon Academia. And I was annoyed because there'd be a lot of turns I'd be like, I didn't use my bonus action. And then I started fishing around on my character and being like, okay, what could I add to my character to make sure I'm always using my bonus action? Because if you don't, it feels like a waste. Which I don't think is the intended effect of bonus actions, right? I don't think they wanted you to feel that way, but that's how it feels at least the way 5e is now.
Right. Well, so you know what it is too? It's funny for me. It's not even 5e. It's fucking Lancer again. Because with Lancer, you get your 2 quick actions, which you can fuse to do a big action with a full action, and then you get a free action.
Lancer has a whole action. Lancer has a whole action juggling system.
Yes, and I really like that style of gameplay. Like, I like being 5.
Right, but you're talking about the speediness of combat. You're gonna lose that if you take the Lancer.
I know you are. That's kind of why the con is sort of out of order. Because I like that
a little bit,
but I do like the speediness of the rounds. Honestly, it's really funny. To the initial point, the rounds went by so quickly while we were doing the combat that I constantly kept not knowing when my turn was. You
kind of forgot. You're like, oh, it's my turn.
Yeah, well, because I was like, wait, is it my turn? And then someone would be like, no, well, technically Fran still has to go. Right. And I was like, oh. Wait, but that still means 3 characters went.
Yes.
In 3 minutes. So like I felt bad because I said her name. I didn't want Sereth to think that I was trying to take her turn constantly. I just genuinely kept losing track of the turn order because it was moving way faster.
Yeah, you lost track. I will say, I lost track a little bit of the turn order sometimes too. Which is kind of funny. Really, yeah, it almost goes too fast sometimes.
Yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it?
A little bit. Yeah, there's an element of that. Yeah.
And I think, again, like, because me coming off the heels of 5e and now running Lancer for a year and a half, rounds for me take upwards of 45 minutes. Like,
right.
So, when you blink and that shit is over, you're like, what year is it? You just look like fucking Tom Hanks at the halfway through Castaway.
Never seen that movie.
Right. You've never seen Castaway?
No.
It's a good movie. Like, I feel bad for saying this, but I always laugh when he loses the volleyball when he gets off the island. Because it's just sort of an inherently goofy thing that he's like completely anthropomorphized this volleyball. But when you're not an asshole about it, no, it is actually quite sad.
Right, yeah.
It's a great film. I would say if you get a chance, you should check it out. It's solid. Anyway,
I see.
Next point. It's actually really interesting and quite fun to jump back into narrative first combat as a player. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Lancer has narrative first combat, but I think I have a hard time portraying it as a GM, and to that point, my players have a hard time figuring it out as players. Whereas I, as a GM, know what I, as a player, would do, and I'm creating some ludonarrative disco biscuits around that. Whereas I, as the player, knowing you as the GM running narrative first combat, I can sort of just weave it the way I expect it to work. You know what I mean? And Fabula points out, we're going to talk about this later, but to be like, I just jump in front of attack for a player. I'm just going to cut the initiative order real quick to, like, take a hit for a homie.
So this is going to feel... I don't mean this to undercut your statement, but I actually wouldn't say Fabula is a fiction-first combat system.
You don't think so?
No. What it is, because you are still mechanically choosing from an action list and deciding an action, right? You're still doing mechanic, fiction, mechanical resolution. At the end of the day, you're saying, I'm making the attack, and then you roll your check, and then mechanical resolution. You say, I'm making my attack roll, I'm deciding the attack action, I'm making my attack roll. Fictional descriptor of attack, and then mechanical resolution. But the difference is that Fabula encourages the mechanical stuff to be much more open-ended than something like 5e. So it sort of feels like it's fictional. It sort of feels like it's fiction first, but it's almost a little bit of a trick. Because even if you say, all right, on my turn, I'm just going to try and do X, Y, and Z random thing to give us a fictional advantage of some kind. Like, I'm going to tackle the guard to the ground so that the other player can try and take his sword out of his hand. That might feel like you're doing a fiction first thing, but really in the perspective of the game, you're making an objective action. Right? Like it has a action type to cover that kind of idea. So it's the mechanical emphasis is still there, but it's obfuscated. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying.
And then the thing is that layer of obfuscation makes it feel more freeform, which I think just generally feels better as a player. You know what I'm saying? Get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I can see what you're saying there.
And also when you run into problems, the GM might say the enemy is up on a ledge, so you can't reach. There's no obvious way to get to it. So you have to overcome that problem. That is now a puzzle that's occurring in the conflict. Whereas in something like 5e, the enemy is 60 feet up the wall. The player goes, okay, do I have enough movement to get to the wall and then climb the wall? Or can I teleport up the wall? And you're calculating distances and checking spells and movement options and all that stuff. So it doesn't feel very freeform. At the end of the day, you're resolving both of them with a mechanical backing, but one adds this layer of obfuscation so that it doesn't feel as crunchy as mechanical. So it feels a little more satisfying to describe and explain how you're overcoming the situation, or overcoming essentially the puzzle, right? Fabula treats a problem like distance or elevation or cover. All of those things are puzzles to solve, not mechanical issues to overcome with math.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, right, Fabula has no mechanic. There is no rule in that game that says, oh, if the enemy is behind cover, their defense goes up by 2, right? There's no rule for that. But instead, if an enemy is behind cover, the GM might say, player, if you want to get to them, you have to overcome that cover somehow.
Right. So
and
I
the
guess
player
would it be
has
fair to say
lots of options.
Would it be fair to say that it is more fiction first than 5e, or than a typical combat system? Because it does allow for, it's saying I want to do a thing, and then when I succeed the check, that thing is accomplished, be it objective action or attack action, right? It's not like, oh, well, you are still attacking at the end of the day. You can't. It's not like 5e where it's like, okay, I want to push that guy down the floor. To go, okay, make a shove action. And then you go, okay,
so,
well, I rolled, I succeeded my shove. Okay, now they're going to make a save. Okay, they made the save. You don't
right. So it's there's a I don't know how to explain. I know I get it from a game design standpoint, but I'm having a hard time explaining it. It's in a Fabula exists in kind of a little bit of an interesting minutia. So you're right in that it is prioritizing the fiction more, but I still wouldn't say it's prioritizing the fiction first and foremost. Whereas if you're playing Apocalypse World, that prioritizes the fiction first and foremost. Fabula, and then D&D is prioritizing the mechanics first and foremost. Fabula sits between them in that it's kind of, I guess I could say it's almost prioritizing them in parallel. Is maybe the best way I could think of putting it at the moment. This feels like the kind of thing that I could come up with a better explanation of if I sat and thought about it for a little while.
Fair.
But yeah, right. But yeah, you're right. Because the thing that's funny about it is 5e, technically, the idea of Fabula's objective action sort of does exist in 5e, right? You can say I'm making a check to try and do X, Y, or Z thing. That is a thing covered by the rules in 5e, but it's so neglected as a rule. It's so deprioritized. Like, it's not that important that you either forget that it's a thing or you use it so rarely that it doesn't feel particularly relevant. Because you're right, the shove action thing, I would like to shove it. Like, if you're a GM who hasn't run 5e a lot and the player says, I would like to shove the enemy, you as a GM might say, okay, make an athletics check, and then the enemy will make an opposed check, and if you succeed, the enemy is shoved over. That's not actually how that rule works. There is a shove action that requires a specific roll and a specific reaction to the roll. But if you're a new GM, you might not know that. Fabula is essentially taking that new GM assumption and saying, no, that just is the rule. So it's this weird, yeah, it's kind of it's like a funny middle ground. But I think the thing that's most interesting is that effectively Fabula achieved what it was trying to achieve, because you as a player feel like it's fiction first combat, which I think was the goal, even though under the hood it's kind of not. So it's mission accomplished because it feels like fiction first combat, but has the mechanical backing.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a fair middle ground to hit.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting middle ground. I don't know if there's I'd have to think about it, but Off the top of my head right now, I can't think of another game that's quite hit the middle ground in that same way, which is interesting. But
Yeah, I don't think no.
Not at the moment. Yeah. But it does also speak to the strength of the general design that you're like, oh, I'm really happy to be doing a fiction-based, a fiction-first combat system, in that the under the hood felt so smooth that you didn't even really notice it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I will say, and from my standpoint, I like it because it means I can do the crunchy mechanical thing with Fabula when I want to, right? I can have an enemy that debuffs a specific stat and opens your character up to more damage, like I did. But I can also make it so that if the enemy is under a certain fictional situation, they're buffed or debuffed, right? Like, you guys took the corrupted wolves away from their home, that debuffed them. But then I also can do the crunchy thing of they have a spell that combos with one of their attacks. It's like, it's cool because I can do both. I can operate in both spaces and kind of wiggle back and forth between them.
Right.
I don't even know if that's 100% was intended or a happy accident or what, but that's how it feels. And I honestly think one of the biggest reasons, and I know this is going to sound kind of funny, I think a big reason for that feeling of the free-flowingness is the lack of giving a shit about distance and movement.
No, that's
because
fair. Yeah, no, because if you don't have to worry about the crunch of how far away you are, where you are positionally, you just sort of assume that because you're in close quarters combat, it is doable, kind of intrinsically, that it works. Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
And it lets you prioritize the narrative because the thing is, right? Fabula is pulling from video games, specifically turn-based JRPGs. And in a turn-based JRPG, you have the cutscene where, I mean, I don't know, minor Final Fantasy X spoilers, I guess, but actually, I'll use the beginning of 10, so it's not a big spoiler. You have the cutscene where Titus and Auron are on the bridge, and all of the weird sin spawn land on the bridge and kind of surround them, right? And I don't know if you remember, but in that tutorial section, there's parts where Auron and Titus are like back to back with each other, and they're fighting because they're surrounded. Visually, cinematically, it's like, oh, they're surrounded and fighting back to back on the bridge. Mechanically, it doesn't fucking matter. It's exactly the same as every other fight in the game. You pick your target and hit your target, right? Mm-hmm. Because the game doesn't actually give a shit about the distances or, how far or who's positioned where. The video game only cares of like hit chance, can you hit, do they have a buff or a debuff, all that stuff. That's what Fabula is emulating. It's emulating that moment, right? Fictionally, you guys were fighting the wolves. You all had your backs to this bonfire and you were kind of semicircling around the wolves to make it so that the wolves couldn't hit you as easily. Mechanically, it doesn't fucking matter, right? Mechanically, they had a debuff. Their exact position relative to the bonfire doesn't really matter. We just know that they are in that general area. So that it's mimicking that vibe quite successfully. Final Fantasy 13 did this a lot too, where the characters, if you watch someone play that game, the characters kind of move around the battlefield somewhat freeformly and will reposition themselves, but it doesn't actually affect anything. It's like a visual cinematic cue. The new Yakuza games, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Yakuza 7 and 8, do the exact same thing. The characters like walk and move around like a designated area and kind of circle each other and shit. But again, mechanically, you're still making like you're declaring an attack and making an attack check against a defense stat and all that shit. So I really think the taking out the giving a shit about movement is a huge part of what makes that vibe. And if you imagine in a video game, there's an enemy up on a ledge, right? You're playing Final Fantasy X and there's an enemy up on the ledge. And you try to attack the enemy, and Titus goes, I can't hit them, they're too far away. And the Waka goes, oh, I can do it. And then you throw the blitz ball on the dude on the ledge. Under the hood, that is just a check for a specific status, which is do you have a ranged weapon or not. But cinematically, fictionally, it feels like the characters are doing their own cool little thing. Like, oh, I'm good at this and you're good at that. And again, it's Fabula's emulating it. Basically, what I'm saying is they did a really good job getting the vibe of the video games they were trying to get the vibe of.
No, they did 100%. Yeah,
that's really what we're looking at.
This really do be the Emma Glaze hour, doesn't it? Like
a little bit.
Congrats, my dude, you nailed it.
I mean, I do have. I mean, listen, I have some little complaints. I think a lot of my complaints on Fabula, as was shown by our fucking 15 minutes talking about dice, a lot of my complaints are very around the edges, right? Like, oh, a little niggle, a little something here, a little, oh, that's a little annoying, you know, like that kind of thing. The core,
and I think
very few complaints.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, and this is not like cover your ass no jutsu, but I do think it is absolutely worth saying that if you like a thing and have no critiques for that thing, that means you did not critically take that thing in any meaningful way.
Yeah, you weren't really absorbing it.
The fact that I have a half a page of good things to say and a half a page of things to say, like, well, I like that, but I didn't like this.
Yeah.
Josh doesn't notice it, but I like mentally taking notes the entire time we were having session because I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like this a lot. Oh, but I kind of wish this was a little different. I think us having 7 episodes of Fabula tells you how much we like this game. But with that, there has to be some level of creative disagreement, if that makes sense. As right. You know,
and to give
on some level game designers.
Right. And to give a little, just to explain what I mean about I have some frustration around the edges, there are core intrinsic mechanics in 5e that I actively am annoyed by and dislike that are like cruxes of the game. That is not really the case with this game. Now, granted, we could get to a point where we use a particular mechanic over and over again, and then the cracks form, and I go, okay, I don't really like this one. I think that's pretty unlikely, though, given what I've read and looked at. I don't think I'll have that problem.
I think if we do have that, so I thought about this. If we do have that problem, I think it will be in regards to fishing for the +2 for traits.
Maybe a little bit.
I think that's where it'll come in. Because, not that I get annoyed by this, but this is a thing in Lancer where I have to ask my players as the GM, right? When they make a roll, I say, roll me a skill check with any relevant triggers. And then we have to do that thing of, well, does that work here? Well, does that work here? And that's every single time they roll a skill check. That is the question I have to ask them.
Right.
And I wouldn't go as far as say it's annoying at this point, but it is unfair of me to expect that my players know what I'm thinking and how I think their skills will work. So we have to have that conversation. It just doesn't work otherwise.
Right.
And it might enter a same mind space where I'm kind of just like, I just kind of wish I had a +2, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the only thing I can foresee in the immediate future that will be frustrating to me is the like,
perhaps,
how much are we supposed to be asking for that +2 for our trait? Let's see where to counter my own point about not having enough stuff to do on one turn.
To argue with myself.
To argue with myself, literally evil Kermit to evil Kermit. I must begrudgingly accept that the single action system effectively eliminates analysis paralysis.
Yes.
Right? You don't, like, it's literally what Josh said. You don't have to worry about maximizing your turn. You go, okay, well, what do we need this turn? Well, we need, our tank needs to heal. Okay, so I, as the support, will not use one of my abilities and will use my inventory points to heal a teammate. That's it. That's all you got to worry about.
Yeah, it goes back, that whole point of you don't have to worry about maximizing a bonus action and a movement and everything, so you can make a decision relatively snappily. And yeah, that all just feeds back into that greater combat speed and stuff. which it again emulates a video game.
Yes.
Right? In a JRPG, if you're in a boss fight, even a particularly long boss fight in a JRPG is probably what, 15 to 30 minutes, and 30 minutes would be pretty long for a boss fight. You know?
About, yeah.
Whereas a D&D combat session that goes 3 hours is like pretty normal.
Oh yeah, wait, we cleared that combat in like less than a session? Shit,
Yeah.
guys, we were fucking firing on all cylinders today.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
go.
Exactly. That's pretty normal in D&D.
Dude, I don't know if I talked about this. So in my the fucking the last big encounter they did, the boss encounter for the latest mission they did, they just completely circumvented it. They were like, we don't want to fight that boss, so we're just gonna steal the objective. And what I was expecting was going to take 4.5 hours, took an hour and 20 minutes, and I went,
Right.
what? And they did, like, I played it off pretty well. They were like, were you expecting that? And I was like, no, not at all. But in reality, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck do we do now? I was supposed to have more time. Oh no.
Right. I will say, just a quick clarification. That's not me saying that a fight in Fabula will go by in 30 minutes. It did take like an hour and a half or so to do the corrupted wolf like boss fight thing I did. But that is because you're still dealing with, 5 human beings who all need to speak and communicate with each other and do all that, yada, yada, right? There's still that human barrier. When you're playing a video game, you press X and the little video game gremlins do as you command because you are their god overlord. That's obviously not the case in tabletop. So it's not going to be that fast, but my point is that it's exponentially faster.
Yeah, it's
just to clarify.
Fascinating, truly. Now, this isn't necessarily a combat thing. This sort of fills the general atmosphere, but also combat, because inventory points are sort of crucial to both of these things. Man, not having to worry about if I have an item is very nice. It's very, very nice. Just saying, I'm just going to heal. I gotta worry about, oh, well, health potions kind of suck, so should I waste my action using a shitty health potion, or should I just attack to try to drop the boss? Don't even have to worry about it. Not even a thought I've ever had playing Fabula in the 2 sessions I played Fabula.
Not even a thought?
Because the standard healing item heals you 50 hit points.
Which is
we cocked a ballin' on that healing, bud.
Yeah.
And yeah, 50 hit points for an action? Yeah, I'll take that. Absolutely.
And there are a
inventory
couple
points
ways
are great.
to slip a free action on that too.
Yeah.
Like Tinkerer has an ability where when they're in crisis, they can use a free inventory action.
Yeah, no, it's very good. I like it a lot. Inventory points rock.
I will say I wish there was more stuff. I wish there was a bigger list of like potential inventory
I wish there was more stuff.
Point things, or if you don't want to have a list of a bespoke list of inventory point items, a bigger chunk of guidance on what an inventory point spend should be capable of. A little more guidance on what can a player potentially whip out with one of these, because Dungeon World has a somewhat similar mechanic with an adventuring pack where you sort of whip out, a useful adventuring tool, and it gives a bit of guidance on limitations, what is expected of it. A little bit more on that of inventory points I would have been fine with, or a bigger list, whichever you felt, But that being said, as the GM, you can just sort of say, fuck it, I'm just going to let inventory points do whatever. Like, you can let them be pretty wide in their capability if you want them to be. Because I think at the end of the day, the game just doesn't care enough about tracking tools and items and stuff like that. It just doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and it's valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of talked about, I didn't write this anywhere, but we did sort of talk about the, and it seems like there's a pretty public consensus on the tonic maybe not being as useful as it could be.
Yeah.
But I think the first idea we spitballed of either
letting it do some healing.
Just toss you 20 hit points of healing. Shit, toss you 15. That's typically, like, from what we were dealing with, one attack. Sure, fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say, like, let it do a little healing, or I mean, I don't know. I think there's a solid argument to be made that just the tonic is a free action. If you don't want to give it any other benefits, just make it.
Oh, if you want to make it one status action, you could, yeah. Yeah, because I don't love the idea. What we're bringing up for anyone who's curious, in the playtest document, they posit the idea that tonic, spending your action on a tonic to clear a status effect is just not useful enough, so you're never gonna do it because it takes up your whole turn. So in the playtest, it says a tonic clears every status effect instead of just one. And I don't know. I just don't love the idea of busting out a tonic to clear every status effect. That just feels a little yo-yo-y.
Yeah,
that's kind of my thing.
Especially if you know the wolves we were fighting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they could have afflicted that shaken on us multiple times.
If they had the mana left over, yeah. They didn't have a ton of mana, but yes.
So the idea that you use it's a full action, use this thing, it clears the thing, you no longer have an action, and then you can get whacked next round and get it back again, just seems like a waste of inventory points and action economy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one.
No, yeah, I get what you mean. I do. Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I don't hate your idea of healing, but also maybe it just doesn't take an action. Or maybe you put both forms. Maybe you put minor tonic and major tonic. One cures one status effect, one cures all of them, one takes no action, one takes an action.
That could be good.
Yeah, you just adjust the inventory price, inventory cost.
To keep the con train roll, and it's not really a con train, to talk about in more detail the cons for combat, in my opinion. I already talked about, I just kind of wish there was more stuff for me to do, but that's because I prefer more combat crunchy systems. It's not really anything that I can even remotely say is objective. It's just my personal opinion. I can move past that one pretty easily. One thing I am curious about, and I put this in the con situation, but this doesn't really fall under a pro or a con. It's an observation, really. Is that it seems that the combat in Fabula runs into a very similar issue that D&D does, which is two combats are equal on paper, but are massively variant in practical play. Because, and to Josh's words, right, we've done two combats so far. Both were normal difficulty combats. And one felt pretty solid. Like, there was a good back and forth. We took some hits. We got some hits. I think two of us went into Crisis in a 4-man party.
Yep.
And then the second combat, which is also a normal combat, we got our shit pushed in.
You really didn't get your shit pushed in that bad, honestly.
I mean,
I know it kind of felt
Paladin
like it
went down. I dropped down to single digits twice. And
right, but going down to single digits doesn't affect anything, you know? Like, the only HP that matters is, the only difference is 0 and 1. So you going down to single digits doesn't matter. So I know it kind of felt like you got your ass kicked, but you really didn't if you look at it from a purely empirical mathematical standpoint. Like, yes, one player went down, but that was kind of it. One player went down.
So here's my thing. That I don't necessarily consider that true in this game, because unlike D&D, where you can just play a fucking up-down whack-a-mole with a player, you cannot do that in Fabula. Rules.
No, you can't, but you
when
can
you're down,
play.
You're down. So running that low health runs a major risk for losing the encounter.
It runs a risk, but you can play up, down, whack-a-mole your health self. And being in single digits, if you do not go down, being in the single digits does not affect you in any way. You don't get weaker at lower health or anything like that. So
no, but I don't.
Just because you dropped low on health doesn't mean that you are getting completely destroyed. It means you are at risk of another player going down, but you didn't go down. So you didn't actually get beat that. Like, if you look at the end result, you didn't really get beat that badly.
Right. So, but that I'm sort of disagreeing with that because of the fact that it is you are either in combat or not in combat based on your health. Getting dropped to numbers that low can mean the difference between winning a full combat and losing a full combat due to compounding difficulty. So dropping that low.
No, getting low on your health does not make any difference. Going down makes a difference.
But if the lower you go, the higher chance you have of going down.
Yes, the higher chance. The higher chance you have, but you did not, like, specifically talking about the fight that occurred, you did not go down. Right? One character went down, nobody else did. And once you got, especially because once you killed the one wolf, immediately your chance of victory skyrocketed because 2 turns got taken off the board and you then outnumbered them. So just because you're going down low on health, though, does not increase your chance of losing in that moment. It increases the chance of things going potentially worse from that point, but it does not in that moment decrease. It's not like you're less effective at 5 health that you are at 55 health.
I think you are less effective. Because if
you're literally not, though. You could do the same damage output, the same actions. Your character's not limited in any way.
You are not limited in a forceful way, but at lower health, if you do not have the resources to heal, there are less things you will do. In 5e, it doesn't really matter what you do on your turn, because if you go down, someone will bring you back up. If you attack someone versus healing someone else, that's more nebulous. There's wiggle room there. But in Fabula, if you have low health as the primary attacker, like I am less likely to stay in the thick of it and will have to shift the overall strategy of the fight as primary damage dealer to not dealing that damage. So it does affect it.
Well, you don't necessarily have to shift away from your damage. You would, in that situation, you should do essentially what you guys did, which is the person who can support you needs to focus on supporting you. It's a big emphasis on teamwork.
Right, but that you might not always be able to have that support.
Right, well, yes, but the game kind of explicitly tells you should build a cohesive team. Like, there isn't a holy trinity explicitly in Fabula, but the game does say, be careful to build a relatively cohesive team. Have someone who can support, have someone who can heal, have someone who can eat hits. Because the game specifically calls out, I don't remember where, but it calls out that if player characters if you have squishy player characters, because you can't run away, like you can't make space, rules as written. I mean, fictionally, you could potentially argue for that. You could come up with a strategy, but rules as written, mechanically speaking, because the wizard character cannot make distance between themselves and the orc. The game is like, doesn't that mean squishy characters could go down easier? And the game says, yes, you have to coordinate your teamwork to protect your squishier characters. That's part of the strategy of how the game works. So you as if you're the primary damage dealer and you're down on 5 HP, that doesn't mean you need to go and protect the wizard or whatever. That means the wizard needs to find a way to help you so you can still keep your damage output going. Right? It has to be a coordinated teamwork. And again, emulating the video game situation, if Titus is low on health, that doesn't mean Titus uses a potion. That means Titus continues to attack because he has haste on him and he can do plenty of damage. What it does mean is the next turn that Yoon is up, she needs to focus on helping Titus out and heal him, or throw him a shell, or throw him a protect, or something like that. That's the idea.
And I get what you're saying, but I think the binary up or down thing throws a monkey wrench into that.
No, I don't think it does. I think it makes it a little more difficult and you have to consider a little bit more, but I don't think it throws a straight up monkey wrench in it. Like there is an element of you have to be potentially more careful because you don't have a Phoenix down, as it were. Which, funny enough, I don't know, missed opportunity. Could have been a Phoenix down item in the game.
I mean, this seems to be pretty contentious based on what Paladin told me about whether there should be resurrect items in the game.
Well, when I say Phoenix down, I don't mean a resurrect. I wouldn't make it a resurrect item. I would make it a get someone up during a conflict scene specifically item. Like it only works in a conflict, and you can only get someone up from 0 if you're in a conflict, and it doesn't do anything outside of that. It's essentially oh no, the character's unconscious, give them some smelling salts and get him back up. Not the player got stabbed through the chest and now I'm going to cast Revivify. Not that situation. You know what I mean?
No,
you know
yes. When I say resurrect, I mean Phoenix down. Like you're in combat, you get dropped, you can come back up.
Yes, I think I don't know. I think there's maybe some room there for that, but
I agree. I mean, here's the thing. This sort of shifts to a second point.
Well, don't worry. Hey, we're not done with this point yet.
Okay.
The crux of what I'm getting at here is the combat we had. You might have felt like there was a momentary we got our asses handed to us, but if you look at the data very empirically and take any kind of emotional attachment to the situation out of it, you didn't actually get your asses handed to you that badly. The situation overall was in your favor. You're like from a purely mechanical, purely empirical standpoint, your character almost went down twice, but didn't. And the other two characters didn't really come that close to going down. And one character did go down. So you really didn't get clapped that badly. Now you were on the edge as a group there. You were on the edge a couple of times of things going worse, but you were still, it went relatively even, all said and done by the end of it. So I don't think it's quite the same problem that 5e has where a fight can just swing out of control because the GM sort of missed their math a little. I think what happened there was that I personally misunderstood the math of the game. But I don't think that the math of the game did not work. I think once I reassessed during the session, I was thinking the math might not be working here. Once I reassessed after the session, I think the math actually worked fine. I was misutilizing it personally, which is a separate thing, and I do think. My criticism of this situation is not that the math is bad. My criticism of this situation is when you're dealing with NPCs and specifically the designing NPC mechanic, I would like a little more guidance. This is where I'm talking about around the edges. There's parts of the game that are very brief on their description and their guidance when it comes to mechanic stuff. And I would like a little more guidance on those elements. I think a lot of it is probably because of just page count, number count, paying an editor to read more words and stuff like that. So I kind of understand why it is the way it is, but I would like a little bit more. And to give a very concrete example of this, when you build an NPC, because the game has an NPC designing system, in terms of damage, the game doesn't give you. It basically says when you make an NPC, their damage should be high roll +5. If you want, you can make that go to high roll +10 with a specific skill that they can pick up, but that eats into their skill budget that NPCs have. The problem is that it doesn't really say anything about how to go beyond +10, But there are some things in the game that go beyond plus 10. Now, the monsters in the bestiary all stop at level 20. So it kind of leaves you a little more high and dry once you get past level 20. And then you have to start looking at your only other guidance is the antagonist bosses in the other atlases. But those are bosses, obviously, so you can't necessarily use boss numbers for everything, right? There's a bit of there's like a gray middle area where we got low level, we got the higher level. I'm kind of missing some of the in-between. And there is an enemy, of course, now I'm not going to be able to find it, but there is an enemy in the book that does have an ability that does over 10 damage. But it is limited because it's a spell and he can only do it so many times. Right? That was kind of the part where I fucked up is the enemy in question. Oh, I found it actually. So there's a lightning wheel enemy that is a level 10 demon, and he has a spell called Fulgor, and it does HR plus 15 bolt damage. But its mana cost is 10 times the number of targets. And it has 60 mana. So if it targets 3 people, it can only do that twice, ever, in a whole fight. The ability I gave the corrupted wolves, they could do it an unlimited number of times, assuming you guys still had the shaken debuff. Now, granted, you guys could have cleared the debuff, but that amount of consistent damage at that level was a little too much. But I had to figure that out by essentially back engineering the game by looking at the bestiary examples and sort of reversing their math. All of this is to say, I would like a little more on designing NPCs and how to utilize them. And also, I would like just more in the bestiary. Now, we have learned that we're going to get a bestiary dedicated atlas that is it's basically a monster manual. So that will probably shore up a lot of this issue I'm having on the GM side of dealing with enemies. But currently with the core book, this is a little bit of a struggle I'm finding.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on the earlier point. Because I see what you're saying. I still don't 100% agree, but...
Which earlier point?
Because there is a binary up and down, I think it makes more sense to say... struggling more or less on a thing based on the binary up and down, I think is valid to say that it was difficult.
I mean, but you do also have to acknowledge that you guys won with only one person. Like, you won the fight with only one person going down. That is just empirically true. So it's not like you skinny your teeth it, you know?
Ultimately, no. I mean, that final heal from Senna was clutch, but it was touch and go for a second, which I think is enough to say it was more than just equal.
Yeah, I mean, fine. I don't agree with your assessment of it.
That's fine.
I will say, because I do need to mention a little bit. The game does mention a little bit on how to handle damage, but this is what I mean where I would like a little more of this. It says, in terms of damage, a successful enemy should do damage equal to 1/3 of an average PC's hit points. Similarly, a PC should do an average of 1/3 to an enemy soldier rank enemy's hit points. So essentially, I was a little bit above that 1/3 mark, and that's where things went a little off because I was doing high roll plus 15. So the highest that the enemy could potentially have rolled, I think, not ignoring the debuffs because they were debuffed at that point, but let's pretend they weren't for a second. The highest they could have rolled was 25, which the highest health person is you at 55, and I think that would, so that's more than 1/3, right? That's about 45%. So almost half your health.
Mhm.
So I did overshoot that damage suggestion a bit. Again, overshooting it a little bit probably would have been okay if it was only once or twice, but they did it over and over again.
Right.
Because again, the lightning wheel enemy does have HR plus feet. So the lightning wheel enemy, the spell it has, Fulgore, is insight plus willpower. HR. So the highest it could roll on that would be, I don't know, what's 8 plus 15, 23. So 23 would again overshoot that third by a little bit on you, for example. Right? Because 23, you'd be looking at about 42%. But he can only do that once or twice. So between reading that bit and then looking at the other monsters examples and then, comparing numbers and stuff, I was able to back engineer the math. I just wish I didn't have to back engineer it. I wish I had a little more of a clear guidance on it.
Fair.
That's not the only thing with the designing NPC section. There's a couple of bits of that where I would like a little more clear guidance, but again, I think it was a question of limiting page count and stuff. I really do think whenever this bestiary comes out, I want it to come out real bad because I have a feeling it is going to be like a must-have book. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, I have no doubt in my mind that's probably what we're going to be looking at.
I'm thinking that, yeah. So we'll see. I'm so curious to see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a long-winded bit, but that was a thing I had to bring up at some point.
No, that's fair. My notes. Oh, yeah, I mean, on the final topic of the binary up and down, it feels bad. Like, it just doesn't feel good to be like, well, now I'm out of the fight and I just have to sit here and do nothing. That's just not fun.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah,
I really don't know. That one is, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to... I understand why it's in place, but it does have a bit of a feels bad if your character is the one that went down.
Yeah, I don't...
I mean, some people would argue D&D has that problem too, but yeah, I don't know.
I know why someone would say that. I don't know that I agree.
Well, you can yo-yo more in D&D, so... Well, the thing... Okay. D&D has that problem if your character dies, right? It doesn't have that problem if your character goes down.
Yeah, I mean, if you get gibbed, yes, that's going to feel bad, man. But,
the problem is Fabula does not have a down state. It either has alive or dead.
Yeah.
Well, it has alive or defeated. Your character does not. That's kind of the concession, right? You're out of the fight, which is shitty, but whether your character is completely killed and no longer playable is up to you as the player, so that is the concession point.
Yeah.
Right? Because Gennaro went down in session 2. If this was D&D, he'd be rolling up a new character for session 3, but because it's not, he doesn't have to. So that is somewhat of a concession. You do got to admit to that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's not dead and he cannot be outright killed, that's good.
It's a pretty solid concession.
It does, and I'm not saying that you will do this, but you could have a situation where your GM is not quite grasping the swing of balance and you guys just get surrendered several times in a row, which would feel really shitty. Yeah. Those are supposed to have like big lasting effects on the narrative. Like, you don't just casually lose a fight. If you lose, it's got to be like...
I think this is also one of those things where some of this problem is intended to be mitigated by the fact that you're playing a social game where everyone's hanging out. So even if your character's dead, it's not like you can sit there, you can still chat and like hang out and suggest things and stuff. There is that element too. Which I think the funny thing is playing in person, your character going down and out during the fight, not as big of a deal probably, because you can like, you get up and go to the kitchen, you get a snack, you take a piss, you kind of like whatever, you'll chat to the person next to you when it's not their turn, like playing in person, I think it's less of a problem. Playing on the virtual tabletop, sometimes there's that little like, the computer is in the way of that vibe, right?
Yeah.
Which you can't, there's nothing you can do about that, particularly. It just kind of is, but I did just have that thought as we were talking about it.
No, I mean, that is a valid thing to say. I think that is fair to be like, given that virtually you have to sit there on some level, right? Because there's technically only one medium for audio delivery, right? That's whoever's
There's the
in control
one medium through which you communicate.
Yeah. In a room, you can talk to people, you can have side conversations. You can't really do that over a Discord call because of the medium.
And also in the room, you can get up and like go to the kitchen and do a thing, and then also like you can hear what's going on, maybe, whereas if I want to get up from my desk for a minute because I died and we're playing virtually, I don't even hear the background chatter, right? Like I took my headphones off,
Yeah.
It's that weird thing. But again, that's not on the game. That's just kind of a trade-off of playing online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know what the answer on that particular problem is. It's just a weird one.
Well, we came up with a solution, I think, using a Fabula point to bring a player up, and with the limitation that it can only be done once per player. Otherwise, you could infinitely farm Fabula points, which would not be ideal.
Right.
I think that works. And like, yeah, technically, if everyone does it once, everybody will come out of that fight with 2 Fabula points at least. But like, seems like you're supposed to use them more often anyway. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world to have those.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'd love to ask Emma, be like, why no Phoenix down? What was the logic?
I feel like a lot of it I think, I'm not trying to speak for him, but it feels like an attempt to not commoditize like the threat of a character going down, which I get and respect, but on the same, it is still a game. There has to be that back and forth.
Right.
And like the idea that, my turn didn't, I forgot to do a thing and now my turn is over and now I'm going to get dunked on because I accidentally attacked instead of guarded, God,
now I'm postulating all these thoughts. Like, I just had the thought, what if you had a Phoenix down type item, but the Phoenix down type item can't be used if there's a villain in the scene, right? If you're fighting soldiers or elites, you can use it, but if a villain shows up, you can't use it. Or sorry, if you're fighting regular NPCs, you can't use it, but if there's a villain present, you can. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I just had that thought off the dome.
Fuck yeah, that'd be cool as fuck.
Or what if it was limited on a, per day basis? Like, you can use it once per day. There's so many. I'm like, I'm mulling thoughts in the back. Not that it really matters, but yeah, I'm like mulling thoughts. Well, I guess it kind of matters because I could add those things to my game if I wanted. But yeah, I'm mulling thoughts in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I did see, though, you made a note that Paladin had a thought on this. Seeing as he's the one who went down.
Yeah. So, lesson of thought, he looked it up. He did some researching, and people recommended, like, because you can be healed, even though you're down and out, like, letting the player still interact with the scene, but just be unable to engage in the combat aspect. So he put the idea forward of, like, maybe Don could start, like, grabbing the barricades and using that to, push against one of the wolves to sort of maybe weaken them or hinder them in some way that isn't directly affecting combat.
Yeah.
Or like throwing support into like in a monetary bonus to allies, just doing something to let it, because it's really the interaction thing. It's if you're down, that's fine. But in D&D, you're still interacting with the scene. You know, players are going, okay, do we bring you back up? Do we still attack?
Sure.
Oh, well, if you bring me back up, I can pop this thing. There's a conversation going on. Whereas when you're down in Fabula, you're just down and are effectively useless to the scene. And yeah, you can still talk and shoot the shit with your friends, but you're no longer able to interact with the game.
Mechanically, you're not interacting. I kind of see what he's getting at, but then my thought becomes, okay, but how do you handle that in terms of initiative? Because part of the way the balance of the game works is that you lose a PC initiative slot when someone goes down, right? Like that's part of the punishment for someone going down is you lose a slot. So how do you deal with that relative to someone trying to help, but they're not in the initiative slot, you know? Like, I'm not immediately saying it's not an option, but I'm just trying to, I'm seeing where the contention points come in, and I don't have a great answer at the moment.
Well, so I think the idea being is that if you can't pose an active threat to the enemy, it doesn't matter if you still have a place on the initiative. Like, you could remove it officially, but still make it like, you know, the equivalent of initiative 20. With a layer action, you just give a player control of like a limited layer action, so to speak. Although, you know, layer actions are specifically like damaging, but or like a regional effect, I guess you could argue in 5e terms.
Maybe after you have to say, you could maybe say that the PC who's downed can do something only after everyone else has already gone. Like you have to go last. You could maybe say. Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I wouldn't say I know what the right answer is, but it does feel like there should be something that you're capable of.
Yeah, I don't see it. That is kind of a funny point, though. Yeah, you made a good point that even when you're downed in D&D, you're still an element of the situation because people are considering what to do with you. That's kind of an interesting point I never considered. Like, you're not doing anything, but you're still affecting the situation because your teammates are thinking about what to do about you.
Right.
Which is kind of weird, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it is a thing that you, like, it is a point that you have to contend with.
Yeah. And now I just had another thought, like, what if you can pick a player back up from being downed, but only if you can get them back up to their crisis score in one shot? Then you could get them back, you know, like make it hard but doable.
Well, assuming you'd have to have some cock-dick ball-in level health for a standard healing potion to not bring you back up to that point.
Well, maybe you say you can't do it with a healing potion. Yeah, like, I don't know. That's what I mean. Like, ideas keep popping in and out of my brain as we talk about it. Which means I should probably stop talking because I'll just keep coming up with new ones.
Yeah, I mean, so I really only have one pro and one con for Fabula points.
Okay. By the way, I do want to just say it. So I did a little more checking on the dice math. If you have a D10 and a D8 on a roll, your chance of hitting 10 is 55%.
So it's not that much higher, but
it's over half, but not that much higher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do have what's that? A 12% increase, which is that's significant statistically speaking.
Yeah, basically,
but
12% increase.
Not a crazy amount.
No, not a crazy amount.
Which is still kind of odd, I feel. Because even if you're a specialist, like, that'll probably bump your odds to...
Well, if you're a specialist, you have 2d10, and then your chance is 64% to hit a 10. If you're rolling on, you know, if you're rolling on a thing that you have your 2 specialist stats on, you'd be looking at 64% to hit difficulty 10.
I feel like I'm forgetting this. Is there not a way to just... There's no help action in this game, right?
Yeah, there is teamwork. All 3 players can help you at once.
Right, but they have to roll to see if they can help you. They can't just help you.
Yes, they have to roll.
Which I do not find to be that particularly useful. I maybe I should have brought that up. Yeah, I mean, I guess a slight reduction to the rituals thing. Rituals are cool and I love them, but having each player roll and have to meet the same DC or potentially the same DC as the main roller, and the only thing you get for a success is a +1, if that. That's kind of brutal. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I think forcing everyone to roll just feels.
So I did just find a thing which I didn't realize before, because I just double checked the rules on teamwork. If a PC performs a check during a conflict scene, any other PC who is able to help them and hasn't already taken a turn may choose to lend the active character a hand. If you do it in a conflict scene, every support check is automatically successful. So there is a help action in conflict scenes, which I did miss that before, but I
just sort of would prefer it just be, if they say they help, you get a +1 per person helping. I just feel like the necessity for the check is sort of clunky in an otherwise really robust game, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's either helpful or useless. There's not really an in-between.
Uh-huh. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there is worth pointing out that your chance of helping somebody you have a bond with goes up quite a bit because you add your bond to the roll, so that is somewhat of a factor. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the point of having other supporting characters make that. I don't know what the idea behind. I can't right now, at least, think about what the objective behind having these supporting characters have to make a roll to see if they do the support or not. Out of a conflict scene. Again, in a conflict scene, you get an automatic extra +1, which is totally relevant and something I completely missed, but definitely relevant.
I know, I definitely agree. In combat, it's 100% relevant. It's interesting. I almost wonder if I would prefer the opposite of during scenes other than combat, you get the automatic +1, like a ritual, because I would prefer it there, but in combat, because there's so much chaotic shit going on that I almost want to feel like you shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be as easy. I don't know.
I actually misread the bond bit. I just double checked. So it's not that you get a bonus to your support roll. It's if you succeed on your support roll, the bonus you give to the leader increases. So if you have a bond with the leader, you have like a level 1 bond. Instead of giving the leader a +1 bonus, you give them a +2 bonus, but you still need to beat that DL10 check first.
Yeah, see, I just don't like that. I don't think there's another way for me to put it. I just don't like it. Like I find it frustrating, and yeah, no, I think I just find it frustrating.
Well, I think you mostly just find it frustrating because the percentages of hitting DL10 by yourself are relatively low. That's kind
of exactly, yeah. I mean, it's twofold again, because adding a bunch of rolls, it sort of goes against the more elegant design of the game, because the game is trying to limit that when possible, and I think this is a possibility, like an easy way to limit that. But yes. If I'm having a hard time succeeding, and the person who's trying to help me has an equally hard time succeeding, if not worse, if they're not good at those things, but we need that point, and there isn't an NPC to take the help action for you, and even then they still, because Radwolf tried helping us and he failed.
Right.
Then it just seems like a get fucked situation. And at that point, why not everyone just try to make the roll on their own? Because if someone rolls like that, we had the situation where I rolled really well on the support.
Right.
And the fact that I think I hit like a 13 or 14 on the DC only gave Lita a +1.
Yes.
So I feel like it needs to be more significant than that. to justify the fact that you, statistically speaking, are going to fail anyway.
Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure. I do feel the desire to reread the entire section on checks really carefully and wondering if I'm misunderstanding something on the GM side. Don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to have Emma back on to sort of talk about it.
It is kind of an odd sticking point. It does. I think the main reason it's bugging me is because it feels weird to be like, the characters are heroes who fail a lot. I'm kind of like, that's weird.
Right. It almost feels like a slightly more extreme version of the thing that I have with the Apocalypse World games, where Apocalypse World, you are going to succeed more often than you are not. But when you do succeed, chances that things are not going to go perfectly. And
well, I think that's a really bad example to use because the two style of games are way divergent from each other. But I kind of get what you mean. Well,
I mean, I see why you don't really like that comparison, but I think it holds true in that you are still the heroes, quote unquote. Like, you're the main characters, and the game wants you to succeed more than it wants you to fail.
But you're not heroic in most Powered by the Apocalypse. Some of them you are, but most of them you're not heroic, right? Fabula, you're very explicitly heroic. Like, you are big dick energy, like you're supposed to be.
Right, but you're still the protagonist. It is assumed that it is through you that the mission will be accomplished.
Not really, no. Apocalypse World phrases the PCs are the people that the camera is paying attention to, but they are not explicitly better or protagonisty in any particular way. They're just who we're focusing on. You could have an Apocalypse World game where the players fail miserably and everything goes horribly wrong, and that's still a perfectly valid campaign in that game's eyes. So, like, I don't really think you can compare them.
I don't know, because then you get into the game says that it's perfectly fine, but if the players feel demoralized and frustrated, then it isn't.
Well, yes, but that comes into understanding the kind of game you're playing.
Yeah, but even if you understand the kind of game you're playing, like, if you understanding, this is the problem that Sam had with Blades, right? Where, like, it really doesn't, on some level, doesn't 100% matter mechanically how it's supposed to work. You do have to sort of understand that the vibes are an equally important thing. Sam had like a
I don't know about 4. Equally important, but they are relevant.
Well, so this is like the frustrating thing about perspective, right? It doesn't matter that something is objectively false if it feels true, and it feels true and it impacts someone in a negative way. Then
I understand what you're saying, but the person designing the game can't account for every little feels bad vibe scenario. So you have to look at what they are presenting with the game and what they are suggesting to you. And Apocalypse World does not at any point suggest that the player characters, it does not suggest that they are expected to win all the time. And also, Apocalypse World gives you the leeway, the fictional leeway, in that when you succeed on a roll on a 7-up, the game says you succeed, and there's a caveat on a 7 to 9, but you succeed, and how mean or not mean the caveat is up to the GM, and thus the GM has a adjusting dial if they want to be meaner or nicer, and that's on them. It gives you that dial to adjust, which Blades also does. Blades specifically says you as the GM have a dial to adjust in terms of how you want the game feel to be. Fabula doesn't really have that dial as much because the checks are binary. They are, D&D style binary. So that is some of the contention of it too. Having the dial to adjust the GM as the GM likes can help a lot, because players might say, we want to play this game, but we don't want to be as brutal. And then use the GM say, okay, well, there's mechanical things that I can tune that the game explicitly tells me to affect. Now, of course, you can mechanically tune anything in a game you want to change the intended effect. But if the game explicitly gives you the tools versus you trying to figure out the tools, like I could say in Fabula, I could give you guys flat bonuses to things or just lower the difficulty levels across generally if I wanted to just increase your general success. But the game doesn't necessarily suggest that to me fully. So there's part of that too, where the math is what the math is, and then the game design suggestions of how to handle it. I think the only reason I feel like it's an issue, if Fabula was a game about dirt farmers trying to kill the king, I wouldn't think it was a problem. I only think it's a problem because Fabula frames the characters as heroic, and so that a below 50% chance on a double D8 feels off. That's why. Yes. That's my problem. It's a tone. It is a tone versus mechanic thing. It feels a little bit off to me. Now, I will say, because we're going back and forth a little on should it be 10 all the time. If you roll double D8s to beat a 7, you have a 76% chance to go 7 or higher. So if you're rolling, if the difficulty level is a 7, that's a totally different scenario. You're looking pretty good.
Do me a favor, run me that for D6s.
Double D6s?
If you can give me double D6s and then a D6 and a D8.
So a D6 and a D8 against a 7 is a 68% chance, 69 if you round up. And then double D6s to beat a 7 is 58% chance.
What was it? What was the other one? Sorry, the double C6.
So if you're rolling 2d6 and you're trying to beat a 7, you have a 58% chance, that's in that. Now we're talking Apocalypse World numbers.
Right.
Which makes sense.
And maybe, I don't know, would it therefore make more sense to say that an easy check? Because to me, an easy check almost feels like, unless you roll particularly dog shit, you're going to fail. Right? That's kind of the essence of easy.
Yes.
So, like, maybe easy should be a 5, and then medium should be a 7, and then, like, hard should be a 12 or something?
Well, a 7, so if you're rolling 2d8, because, again, we're kind of taking d8 as the middle dice. If you roll 2d8 and you're trying to beat a 7, you're going to succeed most of the time. So a 7 is kind of an easy check. If you have a 76.56% chance on 2d8 to beat a 7 or higher. That's like I would consider that an easy check. You have a 3/4, 75%, 3/4 chance, 3 out of 4. I think that makes sense as an easy check.
Well, so the reason I'm sort of thinking about it in terms of D6 at the moment, like D6 is like you're not
right, but D6 is something. You only are gonna have 1, right? Like, well, okay, if you go
no, not necessarily. If you pick specialist,
you could pick specialized, and then you'd have 2. But if you're picking specialized, you're sort of, I think you're aware of that trade-off you're making there, and you know that you're sort of taking an L in one regard to push it towards. Most people, I think, are going to take average or jack of all trades. So I feel like D8 is a better metric to use on what the math is going to usually look like. Emphasis on usually, not always. But even then, even if you are arguing D6s, I don't think you should use D6s because it's the lowest possible die. But even if you are arguing D6s, you have almost a 60% chance of success against a 7. So again, that still does feel like relatively in range on like an easy check. Like you're still kind of in that realm. So I think it really is just the issue of the game suggesting 10 as the usual number. Maybe the 10's a little high.
The 10, yeah, I mean, it definitely feels a little high. Maybe 9?
Could be 9, could be 8. I mean, an 8 on 2d6 is 41% chance. And then an 8 on 2d8 versus an 8 is 67% chance. And then a 9 would be 56% chance. So, yeah.
I almost feel like unfortunately, I'm like, because Lancer's the game I'm playing, is the thing I have currently the most like up-to-date information on. Lancer, like, standard checks DC 10, which at the halfway point of the game, like what players are, pretty easy to beat. I'm just expecting them to succeed most of the time unless they don't have any skill triggers. And then you have you have difficult checks, which are DC 10 minus 1d6.
Yeah.
More difficult, but still, like, they will succeed. Probably feels about 60, 70% of the time. Then you have risky checks, which are technically DC 10, but it's the Apocalypse World thing where it's like, if you roll below a 20, you will suffer some sort of negative outcome with the positive outcome. And then there's a heroic check, which is DC. Risky also has 1d6. And then you have heroic difficulty, which is you have to beat a 20, and you have at least one difficulty. And the sliding scale for Lancer is you can tack on more d6s to have a higher chance of rolling low.
Right. I think
so. You can have a risky check with 2d6.
Lancer's just a really weird one to use because it's like a set difficulty number, whereas Fabula explicitly gives you a sliding scale. I'm kind of thinking right now, like, I'm looking at the description on the determining a difficulty level, and for 10 it says a competent or very talented person. I'm like, okay, so very talented is telling me, yeah, the normie is not going to succeed, or most is often not going to succeed.
Competent and very talented are two very different things.
They kind of are. I agree. Yes, those two words are maybe not the best words.
Yeah, competent just sort of means, right, you have a level of competency. You can do that thing with regular success.
Right. No, I know what you're saying.
Extremely, I know, but I'm just sort of saying a posterity. Extremely talented means that you are innately better at this thing than other people.
Yeah.
Which means that you would succeed more times than you would not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do not on DC 10.
I'm kind of yes. No, you don't. No, yeah, you succeed. You fail more than you succeed on DC 10 if you have rolling 2d8, or even, well, actually, even if you roll. So wait, if you roll again, let's assume D10, D8, 55%. So if you have a D10 and a D8, you succeed more than you fail slightly, but 5% more, which is not a ton.
Not a lot, yeah.
So, I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna start lowering DCs. Is kind of how I'm feeling. Sorry, DLs. That's kind of where I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah, valid, I think.
Yeah, and I think I am gonna reread the section specifically about checks. Just wondering if there's something I'm not understanding potentially. It is weird how. Yeah, I don't know. It is fun. It's funny how you can read the math of a game and go, okay, and then you play the math a little and you go, hold on, I'm sniffing something on the math here.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's exactly why I wanted to have this, like, initial thoughts talk, because, the practicals are important. They come in like this.
I also wonder, like, maybe open checks should be used more. Maybe that's part of it too.
Open checks.
An open check being there's no difficulty level. It just is the better you roll, the better outcome.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that
maybe those should be intended.
Sure.
Yeah, like what? Like I'm trying to basically what I'm trying to figure out now is, okay, the math is what it is, and I don't personally, like, as a GM, I have no interest in fucking with the math. Mostly because I, as a human being, do not like math.
Valid, fair and valid.
So I'm looking at the game, I'm like, what other sliding scales is the game generally giving me? And I just happened to look at the open checks bit, and I'm like, okay, that is another sliding scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then opposed checks, right? Opposed checks are also a sliding scale that you could potentially use because the other your opponent can roll shitty, obviously. So yeah, yeah. And there is the success at a cost rule, which I did give you guys the option to, which nobody's used yet, so that's worth noting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that is
an optional rule. I almost feel like
yeah.
that shouldn't be an optional rule. There's a part of me that wants to say that should just be a rule.
That's valid. I can see that. I understand that. That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I definitely don't think you're wrong there. I think success at a cost, because when you think about it from a certain point of view, that makes sense given that the DC is more difficult than you would think it otherwise should be.
Yeah, and then success is a cost. Success at a cost is the leveler in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this partially goes back to we're a little too D&D pilled. Right?
Yeah, although having success at a cost standard would bring it closer in line to Apocalypse World.
It would, yes. That's what I mean. Like, maybe part of the problem is we're trying to think about this too D&D-esque, and we shouldn't, and maybe we should think closer to Apocalypse World, because we know for a fact Emmanuel took from Apocalypse World for a design reference.
Right.
I don't know. We're getting really deep in the sauce on dice right now.
Well, look, it's a big part of the game, and it's the thing that I have the biggest guff with. So, like, it makes a lot of sense.
I understand, and I wouldn't say I have a full-on guff with it, but it is giving me pause for thought for sure. That being said, we are 2.5 deep, so perhaps we should wrap up a little.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Fabula points. I know you wanted to. Well.
Oh, right. 5 points.
Last little bit on Fabula points.
Yeah. Well, I only have one pro and one con, so we're good.
Yeah.
First pro. They are, as far as I have experienced, the most powerful narrative declaration tool. Yeah, that I have used. That is the most powerful narrative declaration tool.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think from other games that I've seen that's probably the case. Yeah.
And it really was, we did some Googling in the combat, because one of the things that I tried to do was take a hit for another player.
Yeah.
And there was a back and forth of like, and then we looked it up, and in Emma's own words, in the Fabula subreddit, they have no limitations on how they can narratively affect the story. My
initial reaction to the idea of jumping in for the hit was no, because that felt like too much of a mechanical benefit. And there's a little bit in the book where it specifically says that the altering the story effect, which is what Isaiah is ostensibly using, shouldn't have a mechanical benefit. But I think, given what Emmanuel said in that post, and then looking at it in the book, I think what it's saying is that it shouldn't have a mechanically numerical effect. It shouldn't affect, altering the story shouldn't affect the numbers, but it can affect the circumstance. Which is actually, funny enough, another example of the fiction mechanics being somewhat in parallel with each other. Interesting note.
Yeah.
That's actually, honestly, that thought of the idea of them kind of riding parallel, I feel like is going to reframe a couple of things. The way I look at a couple of things in the game. Funny enough.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So wait, what's the con in that case?
The con, I feel like, I don't know if the game wants them to be something you use a lot or not.
I think the game wants I'm going to say yes. The game wants you to. Oh, I just had another thought.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Wait, do you oh no, when you fumble. Okay. Never mind. I was about to say, I was like, oh, maybe part of the failing checks is to accrue Fabula points, but it's only when you fumble you accrue a Fabula point. So,
right, yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah, it just seems a little unclear as to
I think the game
how
intends
often you should be gaining.
I think the game definitely intends you to use them as much as you can, based on two main things. One, the game explicitly says it's a core engine of the game. You should use it a lot. But also the fact that if you start a session with no Fabula points, you automatically get one and if you go down, you get 2, makes me feel that, yeah, use them because you're going to be handed them for free. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, so use them because you're going to be handed them, yes, but like, you don't really have a reliable way of earning them.
The most reliable way you have is the invoking a failure option, which is technically an optional rule.
Yes.
But that is the most reliable. The other reliable way is you get a Fabula point when the villain appears on a scene, but I guess that's not reliable because that's up to the GM. So that one's a little wishy-washy.
Yes. You're also supposed to not see that many villains in the game, right? You're supposed to have villains that like grow with you. So introducing one every 3 sessions would be a little odd.
No, it's not when a new villain appears. It's when a villain appears on a scene, period. So it can be the same guy 500 times.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much the only con I have for Fabula points. We haven't used them enough. I have used them by far the most, just because I'm almost certainly more used to narrative declarations than the rest of the party. Because we played Dungeon World, because we played Fantasy Flight, because we played Blades in the Dark.
Although
I've got training.
They're not a narrative declaration only thing, though, to be fair.
No, but like that is where they're going to have their most interesting use. Like, yes, you can get rerolls, which is good, but you can still roll bad, and you can invoke them for other things. But really, I think people will have the most fun and get the most out of them by like shifting the story around. I almost wish they worked a little bit more like the actual proper noun for narrative declarations in games like Wrath and Glory, which are spin-offs from Fantasy Flight.
Yes.
Because you can use those points to like do more damage or to subtract damage from getting like walloped by a boss or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that could be super fun. Like if you've racked up 3, and let's say I want to do like the dismiss for my Sword Arcana, and you just wallop the boss for like 60-70 damage. That could be cool. And it's like, all right, well, now I'm out of narrative declarations. Potentially when the boss looks at me and says, oh God, die forever, that I can't defend myself from the die forever. He's going to put me in the Raging Demon, and I kind of just got to hold that. Like,
yes, that's an interesting thought. I will say, I did just have a thought too that would be kind of interesting is instead of you gain a Fabula point when you fumble, what if you gain a Fabula point if you fail your check by like 5 or more or something like that?
Yeah,
just to open it up a little bit more.
It would definitely do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing because you want to, it's like, yes, give Fabula points, but be careful giving Fabula points also.
Yeah, don't do it too much.
Because I actually had the thought about giving Fabula points as a narrative thing, kind of like how inspiration is talked about. And I actually made a post in the subreddit, and the consensus was you could do it, but be a little careful.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. So
yeah, I know Paladin got significantly more pushback on the popping back up, so I figured there'd be a little more. I don't know, vitriol is not the right word, but more aggressive resistance to that.
What do you mean more pushback on the popping back up?
He put out a post of like, does it make more sense to like be able to get back up for a reason or another in the game? And he was basically, people were like, no, you really shouldn't do that.
Okay.
I don't know. Interesting thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a lot of shit.
Yeah, brother.
We should probably cut ourselves off before we keep going.
This is my longest episode, I think, by a good bit.
I don't know, maybe.
All right. Lead us out, motherfucker. Swear to God. I swear to God.
I was trying to think of a joke and I kind of lost it. I don't know.
Okay.
Fucking give us a follow on social media. That's all. Whatever.
Yeah, follow us on those guys. Yeah.
Follow us in the social medias. They are in the description.
That's
it. That's all I got.
If you've got an interesting, what's the most interesting thing you've used the Fabula point on? shoot us a comment. I'm quite interested to hear what you have to say. What are the limits that you have tested for how much Emma's no limitations stand to speak?
I'm just imagining, can I spend a Fabula point to kill God? Just picture that.
So for me, there's a good story in Warhammer 40,000 where there's an orc that really likes killing demons, and he goes to a corn world and gets impaled by the demon. And then in a final act of resistance, he crushes the demon's nuts in his power claw.
Nice.
I feel like that's the power. You get down, okay, Dungeon Master, I'm gonna use my final Fabula point to smack his nuts on the way down. Love it. Permanent -2 for the rest of the fight. All right.
Goodbye forever, bitches and hoes.
Peace, motherfuckers. Sorry, Brett.
Yeah, seriously.